Hey folks, Jimmy here, aka Palette of the Dead. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another Getting Started with Warhammer 40k video. Now, as per usual with this type of video, if you like this content, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, drop me a comment down below. I love hearing back from you guys. It goes a massive way to helping out the channel too. Now, obviously, this video we're carrying on our series of looking into what I personally would choose to buy if I was starting to get going with 40k, or I would just wanted to start a new army. And for this, we do need to have a budget in mind. So, my idea is that I would have a budget of £200 to get me going with 40k. So, £200 is a pretty healthy budget. You can get some really good models for that kind of money. It's just that you need to know what you're buying. Now, I'm not going to lie, I'm not the biggest 40k aficionado or anything like that, so I generally will buy things on the factor of what they look like and how cool I think they might be. That may not prove to be correct, but the way this works is obviously I've had to use pricing, and for this I've used Warhammer.com and the third-party retailer. The third-party retailer is Wayland Games, who I've chosen for this series of videos, but of course you can shop elsewhere if you wanted to. So you've always got Goblin Gaming, Element Games, Leodis Games, Just Play Games, yeah, many others. It's definitely worth shopping around because you can get some good bargains on different websites, and it will save you money in the long run, which is what we always like. We like a bargain, we like saving money. Really good stuff. So in this series of video, we've already taken a look at Space Marines, Space Wolves, Black Templars, Leagues of Votann, the World Eaters, and the Tau Empire. But with this video, we're actually going to look at two armies that are very similar. So we're going to kick things off with the Drukhari, or as they used to be known, Dark Eldar. So, as per usual, what we do is we take a combat patrol box. This kicks the army off with an Archon who can take the lead of your army and acts as your general. Then you get 10 of the Cabalite warriors, which are pretty decent, they're pretty good. Then you get 5 of the Incubi who carry some sizable blades with them, which look absolutely savage. And then we get 2 vehicles. So the first vehicle we get is the Ravager, which is a unit that is now about 14 years old, in all honesty, but it's pretty decent. And then the second one we get is a Raider, which is equally as old, looks fairly similar. Yeah, it's just a little bit dated. Now, in all honesty, that's a pretty decent start to an army, with having 2 vehicles, which for that box alone, you're talking 30. If you're buying either of them vehicles, you're talking £35 to £40 each. So you're making a saving on a box straight away, no matter what. Generally speaking, with all the combat patrol boxes, if you're buying any of them, you make a saving. So they are very much worth the money, in my opinion. So pretty good going so far. Now, I then personally would take something a bit interesting. I will take a box of witches, mostly because they look absolutely fierce and they make the army look more varied. They give a bit of variation to the army, which is generally what I prefer with any army, whether it's Age of Sigmar, whether it's 40k, or any other tabletop games or anything like that, where you're building an army. I like to have a variation of units to make them stand out. And the witches do exactly that, so I would definitely take them. I would then pick up a box from Kill Team. So you have 2 to choose from with the Drukhari. Mostly due to price though, I would take Hands of the Archon, which gives you 10 more Cabalite warriors, in all honesty, and they look pretty cool. The other one is a little bit more expensive, so in all honesty, I would let price rule my head over all of that, but they look really good. And then finally, I would need to get a box of fast attack units, so I would go with the Reavers. They're small, nimble kind of speed bike type looking things, like straight out of, say, Star Wars or anything like that. but they look pretty good and they look a little bit funky, and yeah, why not? So, bit of interesting fun, isn't it, really? Now, that leaves us with a little bit of change. Now, I personally, with that little bit of change, would take another HQ unit, and this HQ unit would be in the shape of the Succubus, which is a really nice sculpt. It's genuinely one I kind of like. So, although I'm not a big fan of most of the Drukhari kind of sculpts and the look of their units, it's one I quite like, so it's definitely worth having a blast at it, and yeah, that'll be my pick to just soak up that little bit of change anyway. Now, if you did decide to buy that army, it's going to set you back about £199.50 from GW, or about £169 from third party retailers, and it's roughly about a 760 point army. The only reason we say it's roughly 760 points is because, in all honesty, from what I can tell, the Warhammer app depends on how you build things and how you choose loadouts and stuff like that, can change how many points you're using. So yeah, it's always a bit rough with points, but in all honesty, for my opinion, that's not a bad army. It's a decent size and it's got some variation to it, and it's also got vehicles, so which I always seem to like in 40k. I think the vehicles make them stand out a little bit better, so pretty good stuff there. Now, that brings us on to our second army, and in all honesty, if you haven't already guessed it, it's going to be the Aeldari, also known as the Eldar, and kind of the easiest way I can describe the Aeldari and in turn the Drukhari is to compare them to the Warhammer Fantasy kind of armies that were the High Elves and the Dark Elves. So they're very, very much similar. They're just obviously in space. So, Space Elves, why not? Anyway, as per usual, we kick it off with the Combat Patrol box. This gives us a Farseer in their lovely flowing robes. We get a Wraithlord, which is one of the sleekest looking walker units that 40k gives us. So pretty damn cool stuff. Then we get 6 of Wind Riders, which are the Aeldari speed bike type things. They look very, very similar to the Reavers, so they're not too dissimilar from that. And lastly, we get 10 Guardians, which can be built with either a heavy weapons platform or a serpent scale platform, depending on which you want. And obviously, the box comes in at £95, like it usually does from GW. It's a pretty decent start to get going with your army, giving you a half decent amount of units as well, including that Wraithlord, which look absolutely brilliant. So, pretty good stuff there. I then would be adding in a unit of Rangers to join these guys. It gives you some nice stealthy sniper type units, which look really, really fun. And as per usual with pretty much every Warhammer 40k army, this box gives you some build options, so you can choose different helmets, hoods and such like that, so you can alternate them and make them look how you want them to look. So always worth having a nosy through the instructions to make sure you're making the right choice that you agree with anyway. I would then be taking a unit of Wraithblades. Now, these guys are close quarter warriors that look like they're kind of, shrunken down versions of Wraithlord. The box actually can make also the Wraith Guard if you wanted to, so they look very, very similar. They just have guns, whereas the Wraithblades obviously have blades because they have blades in name. But they're really, really cool. I quite like these. I don't know what it is with them. I think they look quite neat and sleek and goofy at exactly the same time, so why not? Now, this leaves us with a little bit of money left over, so as that for the last item on this receipt, I would take the Harlequin Troop. Now, I'm not going to lie, painting these would be a challenge for most people, especially if you're going to go for that checkerboard pattern on the outfits. I personally know for a fact I would struggle with that checkerboard pattern. I know some people who are very, very good painters that would struggle with that pattern. but these are super cool units. I don't know what it is. I've always liked the look of these units, and the things like the Death Jester as well and such like that. They stand out. They're a unique unit. Now, if you were to choose the good old Space Elves as your army of choice, this little list of units would set you back £197.50 from Warhammer stores or their website, or at a third party around about 158 quid. And it's a roughly 825 point army, which, considering it has some of the coolest minis going, that's pretty good. It's a pretty good army. So, you know, swings and roundabouts, it's worth having a nosy at if you want to get into your good old Space Elves anyway. So, that is now another 2 armies down in the seemingly never-ending list of Warhammer armies. So, there are some cracking models to be had with either army. Only about 75 points between them as well, which is really, really good. And they're also roughly the same cost. So, 2 very, very nice, viable options for your armies. Definitely worth having a look into if you're interested in the idea of Space Elves. But with all that said, thank you very, very much for watching. And yeah, I'll catch you sometime soon. Bye-bye now.